Thank you for being here, actually. There is a wonderful lunch out there, and the fact that you're here is just great. Ricardo and the team, thank you for the invitation. It's a miracle to organize a meeting like this, and you succeeded, so great job to you and the team. Now, a couple of years ago, you might remember something emerged called the COVID vaccine, the COVID virus first, right? There is a connection between the past and the present, and there is a connection between the present and the future. So, by show of hands, who got the Pfizer vaccine? All right, we need to talk, guys. Who got the Moderna vaccine? Great answer. But here is the story. It's the story of immigration. Because what we call the Pfizer vaccine is not actually the Pfizer vaccine. It's the BioNTech vaccine that was licensed to Pfizer. So why this is important? Because BioNTech was a no-name company in Germany, founded by a husband and a wife from Turkish origin. And they were immigrants. So they immigrated from Turkey to Germany and came up with this technology called the mRNA. In parallel, completely unrelated, a Lebanese Armenian immigrated from Lebanon to Canada to the US, and then about 10 years ago, founded a company called Moderna, Nubar Afeyan, Lebanese Armenian. So when you think of it, the fact that we're here and healthy today, despite the virus, is because of a bunch of immigrants who saw the future and decided to invest their time and their effort doing that. Now, I'll give you a little bit of the story behind the story. Moderna was a no-name company, frankly. I don't think anyone knew this name a couple of years ago. And yet it has been in existence for 10 years. I had the pleasure of joining the board just before the virus hit. And it was an interesting challenge because the company was not prepared at all to meet the challenge. And we spent quite a bit of time with the board thinking and discussing with management whether or not we can embark on this journey without, frankly, bankrupting the company. And then we created a small committee to oversee the development and the distribution of COVID vaccine. And once again, think about that. The Moderna committee that was in an oversight role included 3 people: a Lebanese Armenian, a Lebanese, and the third one was Monsef Slawi, a Moroccan. So again, the MENA region was in the lead. What you might not know is when we sit around the board table at Moderna, management and board, and we have our meetings, there are 5 Lebanese sitting around the table. 5. Okay? So it's interesting because talking about the future and talking about the challenges, I was reminded that literally 2 days ago to the day, this was February 24th, 2020, which appears like a century ago. It was the first time where the first doses of vaccines were shipped from our manufacturing plant to the NIH. And a couple of weeks later, the first individual human being got the vaccine. So 2 years ago. And as we say, the rest is history. So if we look at what the world has accomplished over the last 2 years, it's absolutely remarkable. So let me give you a few numbers. 10 billion doses of vaccine were given so far. 10 billion, which means that about 5 billion people are vaccinated, which is about 64% of the total world population. Starting from scratch, this vaccine did not exist 2 years ago. It did not. Here in the US, we distributed about 500 million doses. So let me put this into perspective. It means that every single day, today included, 180,000 doses will be distributed today. So 180,000 people today will get the vaccine. Unheard of in the history of humanity. So how did we get there in a record time? It's because of research, because of the private enterprise, because of the commitment of governance. Now, can you guess which country has the highest rate of vaccination in the world? Country number one. Absolutely wrong. That's wrong, because it's funny how media and communication play a role. It's the United Arab Emirates, 99% of the population, so they're number one. What's the rank of the US? The US is number 63 on the list. Okay? It's not in the first 10, it's number 63 on the list. I would not, and we have about 65% of the population that is vaccinated. I will not even ask you about Lebanon. It's very sad, because I went down the list and could not find it. We have about 30% of the people vaccinated in Lebanon. And it's very sad, because frankly, we could have done it differently, and I will get to this in a minute. So what are the lesson learned? What we learned very quickly is pandemics are like earthquakes and like hurricanes. It's not if they will happen, it's when they will happen. At the same time, when the pandemic hits, that's really the last time you have to think about, well, let's design a plan. Too late. You know, plans have been put in place, and it's only the time for flawless executions. And when you mentioned the countries that have the highest rate of vaccination, it's not because they're smarter, simply because they were prepared. And readiness is extremely important. The second biggest challenge that we faced during the last 2 years, believe it or not, was not the virus. This we know how to deal with. And we have a vaccine that works. What we had to deal with was this absolute unique collision between public health imperative, taking care of people, for heaven's sake, at the same time the partisan politics and media and communication, or miscommunication or discommunication. You know, this is what we had to fight. And this was a unique situation, because in those tough times, usually people get together. We did not, for the most part. Now, we also learned that we can make things happen. Moderna was absolutely not prepared. It's a small biotech company. I mean, it's not to take on this challenge. The way we were able to do it is frankly because the US government said, you develop the vaccine, we'll prepay the doses, and if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, fine. What you don't know, what happens behind the scene, is, to their credit, the administration put multiple bets. And they bought huge quantities of vaccine from 5 or 6 different producers. Why? Because we did not know who will win or who will succeed. So they put the bets. Turns out that it was the smart thing to do. It could not have been done without this commitment. Now, we talked about philanthropy quite a bit today, and that's the theme of TAKREEM. My lesson learned from a philanthropy, and many of you are involved in philanthropy, is what can we do differently? So what we can do differently is the following. When you go to buy a car, whether new or used, you make sure that it has tires on and it has some fuel in the tank. Sounds obvious, right? I mean, you will never buy a car that doesn't have tires on. Yet, that's exactly the situation we faced with the COVID vaccine. Let me explain. We received tons of funds to buy the vaccine, which was totally great. However, those countries, those entities, those organizations who could not afford to buy the vaccine could not afford to distribute the vaccine and to get it to the people who need it. And unfortunately today, we have millions and millions and millions of doses of vaccine that are slowly but surely expiring in warehouses, not because they're not there, it's because there was no system, there was no structure to get them from point A to point B. So please, when you think about philanthropy, when you think of giving, just think of making sure that whatever you contribute to is actually getting to the people who need it, okay? And I'm looking at you, Manal. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's extremely important. And whether it can be built, supported, or funded, but this is where the need is. The second is first come, first serve. I'm asked very often, why is it that Lebanon did not get its vaccine in time? Well, because they did not ask. Let me repeat this. They did not ask. One thing that was obvious during the pandemic is money was available, supply was not. And when you combine A and B, it means first come, first serve. And there was no preferential treatment whatsoever, contrary to what you might read. It was, we have a finite supply, and frankly, those who called us first got it. And what was very sad during the last 2 years is the fact that I don't know how many donors called me and say, we have the money, get us the vaccine. And fortunately, the supply was not there anymore. So with that in mind, hopefully, and frankly, I'm very optimistic that we're turning this page because the pandemic is slowly transitioning to an endemic state. So it will not be behind us yet. So continue to be careful, but I think the worst is over. I'd like simply to leave you with one thought. When your path will cross someone who took care of COVID patients, whether it's a physician, whether it's a nurse, whether it's an EMT person, whether it's the janitor who made sure that the emergency room was clean, just remember to say thank you. That's all they need. Thank you. Because let's remember and let's not be forgotten that they put their life on the line for us. Thank you.